So we can really begin to make much faster, easier progress at living as what we've seen if we're just as open to see what is unreal as what is real. Why don't we want to look at illusion? Why don't we want to look at the egoic sense of self? What is it that stops us from really developing this attitude? Why am I not perhaps as excited to see what's not true about myself as to see what is true? You know, when I stopped to really examine this in myself, I began to see it's only because I believe I have to suffer looking at what's unreal. I have to identify with it. The more and more I looked at it, the more I realized it's actually impossible to identify with these old beliefs if I really want to see where they're playing, if I'm really interested in looking at where I habitually go back into this old way of perceiving. And I found eventually that if I embrace where these patterns are still playing, even ahead of time, I can look at where I tend to go into contracted ways of thinking about myself. Then I'm much less likely to be able to just unconsciously fall asleep and begin to identify as a separate being again. And I might even begin to break through faster into what's real by looking at what's unreal, by not rejecting it. It's totally possible to have these karmic patterns playing and yet not identify with them at all if we're open to see. Where am I still deluding myself? Where am I still dreaming this dream of separation? Where am I still limiting myself artificially? Without blaming as well. That's the key. You, as the real self, have been dreaming yourself to be a separate being for a very long time. And that habit persists for a little while, even after we've seen what is real, what is true about ourselves. Even after we've come to sometimes a very clear seeing that this isn't real, that what I actually am is something much more expansive, then we can still find ourselves going back into these old ways. Why is that? Because we don't want to look. We don't want to see. If what I actually am is awareness, that all awareness can do is to be aware. It's naturally seeing in its essence, isn't it? Observing, witnessing, watching. And if there's some parts of my life that I don't want to see, don't want to really look at, that I'm kind of unconsciously stepping back from, not wanting to see, then that's I am not being the truth in that moment. I'm not being the seeing. I'm trying to not see. We begin to suffer. And that is the only reason why these patterns continue. So if you find this helpful, what I'm saying today, if you find this useful, you can literally take a pen and paper and make a list of the areas of your life that really aren't functioning so well. Maybe your awakening isn't functioning so well. And look at what ideas are being suggested in those moments to you by your mind out of habit that we've automatically agreed with. And a real shining of the true light that you are onto these illusionary beliefs is going to allow you to come out of them. Nobody wants to look at the egoic beliefs, really. We have to kind of cultivate a willingness to look. But we only don't want to look because we believe it's going to be painful and we're going to get caught back in it again. But what I'd really like you to hear is that we can only get caught in illusion again if we're not willing to see it playing. The very moment I'm willing to see where I'm still being a separate being, I'll be free of it. I'll be awake to it. I'll be awake inside this dream that's still going on of a separation, of a separate being, the remnants of where that's still playing in my life. So looking at where your life isn't going so well, and then looking at the ideas that play in those moments, seeing just how much some part of us is still invested in those ideas. And then just a simple willingness to see, to want to recognize and see. And we can cultivate that willingness in any moment. The only way I'm going to come out of this stuff permanently is to want to see it, to want to have this clearer and clearer recognition. This is simply not true for me anymore. And I don't want to keep experiencing it. So hopefully that leaves you feeling right back in control, that we're not duty bound to live out this painfully slow oscillation of experiencing what's real and then being thrown back into illusion, the unreality of the separate self. That oscillation, that swinging will go on as long as I'm not wanting to see what's not real. As long as I'm only wanting to see what's real, it'll continue back and forth. So